The first step in sewing a buttonhole is to stabilize your fabric. You're going to want to get interfacing that is medium to stiff, and iron-on works best. So if you have iron-on interfacing, you're going to want to find the side of the interfacing that has the little glue dots on it. You can usually feel them. Take that and iron it on lightly. You don't have to iron on too much, but just a little bit to start to melt those glue dots onto the fabric. The next step is to take your fabric over to the sewing machine. Okay, I got my machine threaded back up. Again, my needle is just to the left of the long part of the eye there. You can see when your needle stitches, see how it jumps over to the left, and then we're going to go closer. Just going to place my needle so that it just lands on the edge. At the end, we're going to want that long center stick of the eye on the absolute center of the buttonhole. Then I'm going to stitch down the center eye mark all the way down to where the bottom is. Okay, I always stop when I get close because I want to try to be on as possible on the line as much as possible. Okay, next I'm going to change my stitch selector to the number 2 because that's going to create the bottom stop of my buttonhole. Then I'm just going to do a few stitches. See how that jumps way over to create a bottom stop? 3 stitches will be plenty. Then I'm going to change my stitch selector to the 3 because now I want to go up the other side. The next step in sewing the button is going up the right hand side of the buttonhole. I've switched my stitch selector to the 3 in the buttonhole process, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm just stitching like I was stitching forward. The machine tells the buttonhole to stitch backwards, so don't be confused that I'm hitting the reverse button because I'm not. Okay, just go to the edge of your little eye and then flip to 4 because we need to cap off the top of the buttonhole. Pull that up and let you from the top. And just 3 or 4 stitches to cap off the top. When you're finished, your buttonhole will look like this with a top and a bottom, and then up both sides you have a nice little ladder stitch. The next part of your buttonhole is to open up the fabric in between so you actually have a hole. So I'm going to take my buttonhole and fold it in half and then make a snip in between the 2 lines of threading. I have a nice sharp embroidery scissors. I'm going to take and make a snip down the center, not cutting any of the stitches, just cutting the fabric that is down the middle. You can also use a seam ripper to do this. Be careful again not to cut any stitches, but to just open up that fabric down the middle of the buttonhole. Then we're going to flip to the back. Cut the tails off, of course. Then you're going to take your iron-on interfacing and go ahead and pull that off. You want to try to pull it all off. That's why we don't want to iron it on too tight. And then you're just going to clip and trim around that. Just clip and trim. Trim all that interfacing off as much as you can without clipping any stitches so that you have a nice buttonhole on the back. Flipping back over to look at the front. We have a buttonhole with an opening where we can put our button in, And then on the back it's still held nice and strong by the interfacing, and all of the stitching is still intact. Then you are finished.